Welcome, everybody. It is Wednesday, December the 12th. We are coming closer and closer and closer to Christmas. Ed, did you know, remember at the end of the day yesterday, we were trying to figure out where the hell was all this sudden end-of-day volume coming from?
Right.
Well, aren't we on top of things here? Aren't we just the pulse at the center of the fucking universe? It was the passage of the Farm Bill.
No kidding.
The Farm Bill, which is basically
passed?
made... Yeah, so that means that CBD derived from industrial hemp is now legal in all 50 states for the first time ever.
Is that why hemp has maybe moved from...
Do you think the symbol HEMP might have been explaining cause for that stock to double in 2 hours?
Do you know that this morning, okay, so now that the news is out, it was 80 cents 2 or 3 days ago. This morning it hit $1.70 something.
Really?
It's now backed off to $1.52, but much like we always see it, right? Buy on rumor, sell on news. So,
yeah. Yeah, well, did you buy anything?
No. I'm sort of loaded up on Crown mining.
Yeah. Interestingly, looking at my NDI at the end of the day, this is the Cannabis Large Cap Index. There's a sell-off that started at 2 p.m. So today's chart looks like the inverse of yesterday's chart on No News, looking at my chart.
Hemp's up 11, just to interrupt here, and
looking at my... There we go.
Yeah, wow.
See? Look at that. This is intraday, 2 p.m., sell-off begins.
Look where we were this morning. So
I know. So this morning, this is comes out, opens like a wild man, flies higher, then drops, then flies back almost to the same level earlier in the day, drops to lower than the first drop in the day.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it's a
we saw some bounces there during the middle day around noon, right along that bottom, and then now it's
over here.
Yeah, so we can rally. I say we rally back here.
Between now and 4 o'clock today?
Well, no, to the breakdown point. Like in other words, you get a little bit of rally and then sell off.
Yeah, maybe. Stranger things have been known to happen. Let's see. Today we have a really interesting show. We have Steve Martin, CEO of Pond Technologies, is going to be here.
I visited their facility in St. Mary's a couple years ago.
Really?
I drove out there from my hometown of London,
and what
Ontario.
Did you see? What did you learn? What did you what did you get out of that?
It would take me a while to refresh my memory, but I saw some interesting things there, some interesting technology. They're basically turning, smokestacks. They're making. It's amazing technology. I don't know.
Okay, great. What is it?
Yeah.
It sounds amazing.
It was 2 years ago.
Incredible.
I can't remember what happened yesterday.
2 years ago?
All I know is they
So you went out there 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, this will be great to have him on the show. So we'll have to have you on the show when we have him on the show.
Is he here?
He's going to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Martin.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Not the Steve Martin, but he is the Steve Martin. But
I'm
not
a wild
that
and crazy guy.
Let's see who else we got here. Well, Ben Smith is going to join us via Skype. He's going to be talking about that Scotiabank piece that essentially comes out in support of Aphria. I don't know if you would qualify that as support of Aphria so much as you would a questioning of the integrity of the research put forth by Hindenburg and QCM that took Aphria stock down ever so briefly. Now that, in the rearview mirror, that whole research exercise is looking like nothing more or less than a short attack. Though, let us not forget that there were some things pointed out there that certainly bear further scrutiny, and this is not the end of that story. I'm just putting it out there. Or as my friend Ed would say, just saying.
Just saying.
Just saying. Anyways, we also have Steve Misener, who's going to make an appearance today. We are going to talk to Alan Brochstein via Skype at 3:30. He's going to fill in the nuances on the Farm Bill. We're going to have the CEO of Grown Rogue here.
Soon.
And, well, soon. He's,
That's Oregon, isn't it?
Sorry?
Are they based in Oregon?
Rogue River, Oregon. Obie Strickler is the CEO. He's going to be joining us. And what else? We have, of course, the headline news here with Ricky Gerwitz.
Thanks. And here are the headlines moving markets today. Aphria Inc. announced it has signed a letter of intent with Insumos Medicos SA, a Paraguayan pharmaceutical manufacturing, import, and distribution company. The two companies are entering into an exclusive supply and distribution agreement to provide medical cannabis in Paraguay. Insumos is a distributor of pharmaceuticals to hospitals within Paraguay. As part of the proposed agreement, Insumos will undertake the registration of Aphria's products with Paraguay's Ministry of Public Health and Social Welfare and appropriate licensing for the import of medical cannabis. When the proposed agreement is complete, Paraguay will be the third market in Latin America after Argentina and Colombia where Aphria products will be distributed. The U.S. Senate has approved a far-reaching agriculture bill that includes a provision to legalize industrial hemp. The vote means that the U.S. is one step closer to ending its decades-long prohibition of the non-psychoactive plant in the cannabis family. It will also allow farmers to cultivate and sell a lucrative crop that can be used to create a range of products from cosmetics to concrete. The bill passed 87-13 in the Senate, and the House is expected to take it up soon. If the House approves the bill, it will be sent to President Donald Trump's desk to be signed into law. And Alan Brochstein, a 420 investor, will be joining James later in the show to talk about how this farm bill will affect cannabis stocks. New Strike Brands Limited announced that its wholly owned subsidiary, Up Cannabis Inc., has received initial purchase orders from PEI Cannabis Management Corporation for adult use cannabis products. PEI becomes the 6th Canadian province with which Up Cannabis has announced agreements. They have formalized supply agreements with the Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation, Ontario Cannabis Store, and the Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Commission. The company also has a signed memorandum of understanding with BC Liquor Distribution, as well as having been cleared as a supplier to the Saskatchewan Liquor and Gaming Authority. Vivo Cannabis Inc. announced that it has granted an aggregate of 2,790,500 stock options to certain directors, officers, and employees and consultants of the company in accordance with the company's stock option plan. Each option is exercisable into one common share in the capital of the company at a price of 89 cents per share. LGC Capital Limited announced that it has closed its previously announced transaction with Swiss cannabis producer Viridi Unit SA. LGC has issued 35 million shares of its common stock at a price of 11 cents, each to Viridi in exchange for a 30% equity interest in Viridi, plus a 5% royalty on Viridi's net sales over 10 years. All final documentation in respect of the transaction will be submitted today to the TSX Venture Exchange. And that's your news for today.
Wow.
And we're
music at the end of that little news bumper there.
Is that like a little ditty?
A little ditty. I think a ditty's got more notes in it than what we would call it.
Might be some words too.
You know what they call that? Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
The mic is off.
Mic is off.
I've turned yours back on. How's that?
Can you
Hey,
hear
all
me?
right.
Can you hear me?
The interesting thing about the
Ditty.
the ditty actually is, you know what they call that little? It's called a sting.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Anyways,
but
more useless information for the consumption of the general universe. Let's take a quick look at market, shall we, and see where we stand today in the grand scheme of all things. I am going to do my best here to pull up a coherent argument for, where is it? Oh, no, that's not what I wanted to see. Okay, so let's start off looking intraday on the S&P. Pretty much a sideways day. I mean, tell me if that's not as sideways a day as any index can muster. So
Yeah, but sideways day, except big gap on the open. In other words, this thing is up at one point almost 40 S&P points.
Yeah, which is a lot.
Because I think that, it's about 300. But I think the Dow was up 400 at one point.
Really? What for? What's everybody so excited about? did
I'll tell you what they're
Donald Trump
excited
start-
about, because the sellers are, there's been an exhaustion to the downside, to the sell side.
Yeah?
Exhaustion.
Okay, I'm going to pull up I'm going to look at the Ramana. Okay, now I'm going to look at all the constituents here of the Canadian Cannabis Index.
Yes.
And we have a mixed bag. Look at Aphria down 26 cents to 7.94, 3.17%. Aurora up 2.9%, 23 cents to 8.16. Canopy Growth down $1.16 or 2.62% to 43.14. But Cureleaf up 20 cents, 3.01 cents to 6.84. What gives?
They announced a buyback for their stock, eh? They're buying back a bunch of their
normal course issuer bid?
Yeah.
How much stock are they buying back?
Quite a bit.
Percentage of float wise. Let's make up a number.
Somewhere between 0 and 100.
Boy,
No,
you
I think-
are such an insightful son of a bitch, Edward. I gotta say. Somewhere between 0 and 100.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, they can't buy any more than that. And I think and I think on an issuer bid, you're limited to. I think in any one bid, I think it's limited to. Is it 5% or 10%?
Of the outstanding shares.
Yeah, like one bid over a certain period of time. You can't just say, "I'm buying it all back." Cancel all the shares. No more shares trade. Can't
That
do
would be funny. Why would you want to? Isn't the whole
why would
purpose
you
of-
want to?
Exactly.
Well, but I
The
give
purpose
them
is to
credit.
sell.
They've sold stock higher on the issue, so they're buying stock that they sold to the public back a lot cheaper and canceling the shares. I like that, and I don't think they're using all their cash.
Right. Why not?
Well, because they might have trouble raising more.
The S&P right now is up 1.18%.
Yeah, it's backing off here. You know what I don't like to see here? Look at Tilray down 760 today. Tilray.
8%. So down to 86.45. Why would Tilray be selling off?
Well, because maybe it's overvalued.
Or maybe, did some of that insider free trading paper come free trading?
Yes, it did.
Some restricted paper shares are there now? Yeah, well, that's why, there's nobody with a, $7 cost basis can resist a $100 stock price to sell their stock into, is there? That's the bottom line on that. Okay, so let's look at how the constituents are doing on the CSE, better known as the Canadian Weed Index, or the Canadian Weed Exchange, the Canadian Cannabis Exchange. CSE, let's see, how are we looking here? Let's arrange these by who increased the most percentage. Big winner today, GHG, up 45.83%.
Now, what index you looking at, James?
I'm not the index, I'm looking at all the constituents of the, so the CSE index,
Yeah, okay,
sorry.
CSE.
Yeah. So GHG is up 45%. Cali, C-A-L-I, is up, it's 14 cents, up 2 cents. AHG, up 8 cents. Let's see, nothing really with the Lifestyle Delivery Systems tacked on another 4 cents today, up 10%. Nothing really in the large caps is showing up there. Let's look at percentage losses. The big loser, QC. Don't even know who they are. High Hampton, HC, is down 11.86% to 26 cents.
Jesus.
Believe is down 1 penny to 10 cents. What's going on with all these CSE stocks? It seems like the big ones are having a hard time maintaining their IPO and issue prices, RTO prices. Acreage US is still off. Well, actually, before I open my big fat yap, let's go see exactly how much it's off. Boy, oh boy.
Boy, oh boy.
ACRG.U.
It shows up the CSE Canada,
X.
it's up 11%. It's up. Oh no, it's 11 points. 0.7%.
Whoa! Talk
Modest.
about a chart that's all over the map. Look at this intraday, Ed, right up there, eh? That's acreage.
Yeah, pretty thin, eh?
Yeah.
A.
A.
B.
Super light volume. RSI is down to 10.72. So that's what I call an absence of RSI. Would you agree?
Yes.
But so it traded as high as 1785. If I was a betting man, I would bet that acreage has doesn't really have a plan here for the market. You know, they announced a $160 million acquisition of that Oregon thing. 160 million at 25 deemed value of $25 a share. So was the thing actually worth 160 million, or did they just create that price by making them accept $25 share price because they actually got it for 30, 40, 50, 60 million. Anyways, it's going to be hard to prove up that number. We'll be looking deeper into that one. Let's talk about some of our other near and dears. We had, I wanted to take a look at, oh, look.
Oh.
30 mils says, look up USTC ticker hemp. Okay, well, we did that.
Well, hemp is in Canadian, but let's take a look at. All right, I can do that.
He wants us to look up, okay, you want us to look up an OTC stock?
HEMP, enter. There it is.
It's not Hempco? It's a different one?
It's a different one.
Yeah, okay, so dump that. We don't look up OTC stocks.
Okay, let's go, we'll look at it in Canada.
Yeah.
CA.
Hemp CNX.
There we go, $1.52. Look at that.
Yeah, okay.
So look, it was 85 cents 4 days ago. Shot up to about $1.10, went sideways. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Well, couple of things, right? We've already had a big move. It's hard to step into one of these things now, I would say, but I just got to point out.
So this is the pricing in of the Farm Bill.
It's got to be.
All right.
But look at this tail. Look at that wick. But then the next day, another big wick. Yeah, and now we've already doubled. I mean, can we double again? Sure, but more likely, we're through the band. I'd say we're going to have a little correction tomorrow.
All right. Right now, I'm going to have a conversation with Obie Strickler from Grown Rogue. He's the CEO of Grown Rogue, which trades on the CSE.
I like that. It sounds good. Grown Rogue. That's got a good ring to it.
Yeah. All right. So here's that conversation. Obie, why don't we start with an overview? What is it that Grown Rogue International does?
Yeah, Grown Rogue International is a U.S.-based cannabis company, really focused on three primary mandates. The first is brand. We believe the future of this industry is really in the brand. It's a consumer packaged goods space. So we're very focused on the long-term goals of establishing trust and transparency with the consumers. Secondarily, because of the challenges in the supply chain, we're very focused on vertical integration, at least in the near term. There's a lot of issues around ensuring quality of product. It starts with the manufacturer and ends up with the final retail consumer. And then obviously, thirdly, with the federal restrictions around interstate commerce, being a multi-state operator and expanding your geographic footprint is extremely critical. So Grown Rogue is focused kind of at a high level on achieving those three primary objectives. And we do that with a great team, a definite focus on quality of products, compliance from the regulatory side, to ensure that we bring, the proper procedures and are normalizing cannabis as the industry matures and consumers get more comfortable with the products.
Okay, so essentially a multi-state operator that's vertically integrated. Tell me about your growing footprint and what's your customer base look like right now?
Yeah, good question. The growing footprint right now is on the manufacturing side. We have about 100,000 square feet of mixed indoor and outdoor cultivation. We use a lot of our outdoor cultivation for feedstock for our derivative products. That's pre-rolls, concentrates, cartridges. There's been a big push towards, terpenes and other profiles that are associated with the product. And the outdoor growing really creates a much better input for those types of end consumer products. We also have a large state-of-the-art indoor facility that we produce, mostly a base flower that goes to the market. The consumer right now is still, it's transitioning to more of the professional, more of the normalized mainstream consumer, doctors and soccer moms, attorneys, more of that professional network. And so really the Grown Rogue brand is focused on appealing to that demographic. But obviously there's still a lot of the conventional, historical, smokers and consumers of the product that are a big part of our market today.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you've got an interesting sort of unique thing that I've never seen before is your nitrogen sealed pre-rolls. What is that all about?
Yeah, we have a huge focus on quality of products, and in order to reach the quality that we expect, our goal is to provide the freshest possible product that you can achieve. And so as we looked at different ways to preserve cannabis to ensure that it's as close to when we harvest as when the consumer gets to purchase the product, we looked at different ways to, stabilize the degradation that occurs. And so we settled on nitrogen as an inert gas in order to provide that. And what we found was in the pre-rolls, and we do this for our flower as well, that we could create a solution that allowed us to essentially preserve a pre-roll to that point. So we have a nitrogen patent pending sealing technology that we use to ensure that the pre-rolls that we put to the market are the freshest possible.
Okay, so in the context of the markets in Oregon and California, is it a case where it's getting tougher and tougher to compete in terms of margin because there's such an oversupply of cannabis in the marketplace, or has that not really become a challenge for anybody yet?
You're definitely seeing compression in pricing. Everyone anticipated, supply demand mechanics working. I don't think anyone anticipated it occurring as fast as it has. But obviously with producer-based states like Oregon and California, we're centralized in the Emerald Triangle, which has been one of the, world famous regions for production of cannabis for a long time. We anticipated some of this coming. As far as impacting our business, obviously when, pricing compresses, your margins start to shrink some. But that being said, Grown Rogues continue to be able to excel and expand our business model. While we don't anticipate, this type of growth continuing as, the company grows and gets bigger, through Q3 of 2018, we were at a 30% month-over-month compound annual growth rate. So while we're in a very competitive market with compressing prices, our approach, our brand, our transparency, our commitment to the consumer is really, reaping the benefits of, that philosophy that we hold inside the company.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what would you say is your competitive differentiator that allows Grown Rogue to compete so successfully in these competitive marketplaces?
A lot of it comes down to the team that we put in place. That's from the execution standpoint. Really the way we're separating ourselves with the consumer is establishing a much simpler way for consumers to purchase. So pretty much every single product that we manufacture or bring into our portfolio is classified into 5 simple categories. It's based upon the Grown Rogue name, based upon Rogue, which we're in the Rogue Valley. It's relax, optimize, groove, uplift, energize. And this allows the consumer to really understand and make a decision for their purchase based upon the experience that they want to have when they consume cannabis. We promote a very active and healthy lifestyle. Some companies are moving towards the experience component or the classification to simplify purchasing decisions. But Grown Rogue is the only company that's actually validating where we place those products based upon crowdsourcing data. So we actually go out to the consumer, they're able to participate in a survey that we put on that, asks them questions about demographic, height, weight, other things that they experience when they consume that allows us to, through the psychoanalysis component, confirm the classifications we put our products in. And then we also have a very robust and sophisticated analytical program that we use that takes in CBD and THC ratios, terpene profiles, and which terpenes are associated with the products, so that we really create the right experience every time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so did the passage of the Farm Bill yesterday constitute any sort of advantage or future catalyst for Grown Rogue?
Absolutely. In the near term, there will obviously be some benefits around normalization of cannabis. The regulatory structure in the U.S. is starting to change, which is beneficial for everyone. It really is going to help with like hemp and CBD, which is becoming a big market in the U.S. And one of the things that Grown Rogue is navigating into as part of some of like our edible products. CBD allows you to place products in the states where THC is not legal. also allows you to ship, from a single manufacturing center. It really allows you to scale your business in a much more efficient and pragmatic way.
Okay, and so you've established in California and Oregon so far. Are there other states that you have your eye on at this point?
Absolutely. As part of our mandate to our board and our shareholders, being a multi-state operator to expand the geographic footprint is extremely critical. So we're constantly evaluating states. We took a very, approach that's really factored in, the parameters that we've identified. Most of it comes down to the timing from medical to recreational transition is really where Grown Rogue focuses, is establishing our foothold, our team during that transition. If you get into a state too early, obviously, your time horizon to create a return on your investment is a little bit longer than we'd like. And as you've seen in other more mature states, you get into them too late, and the competitive nature of the markets, really, the ability to put our platform in place becomes much tougher.
Okay, so what is it that excites you most about the emerging markets in the whole United States?
I think the most exciting part is really to, provide to the consumer a healthier alternative to a lot of the, existing vices that are out there, from alcohol to tobacco. And you're seeing some of those larger companies come into our sector. You saw Constellation's investment. You just saw Altria come in with their investment into Kronos. What Grown Rogue's really focused on is providing, normalizing, I guess, the cannabis component and really providing an opportunity for people to utilize this in a healthy and active lifestyle. And we really look at the market as there's three different critical components. There's the true medical side, which we believe will be dominated mostly by pharmaceutical type companies that are focused on lab studies and really taking a scientific approach to the medical benefits. That's really not Grown Rogue's focus. Why we believe and support and are committed to those types of products, we're not building that type of company. On the adult use side, we really see a bifurcation where there is, your conventional, call it stoner, who is smoking to get, a very specific effect. And again, that's not the Grown Rogue focus. Our focus is on the active, enthusiast who is looking at these products to, maybe it's help with sleep. They're stressed out because of a relationship or a job. Maybe instead of taking caffeine in the afternoon, they'd like to take an energized drink that provides them, that pump that you need to get through the rest of the day. We're big on active outdoor lifestyles, and we really want our company and our products to be supportive of that focus.
Okay, well that's great, Obie. That's an interesting introduction. We're going to follow with interest. We'll come back to you in a quarter's time and see how you're doing. Thanks for joining me today. Well, everybody, welcome back. Now, guess who's going to join us, Ed?
Somebody from Houston?
That's not a bad guess at all.
Come on.
Alan Brochstein is joining us via
people
Skype.
live in Houston, though?
What?
A lot of people live in Houston.
I didn't think anybody lived in Houston. Well, I know Alan Brochstein lives in Houston. That's the only person I know in Houston. Hey, Alan, how are you?
Hey, Alan. Nice to see you, young fella.
Hey, it's great to see you. Nothing against Ed, but it's really nice to see you, James.
Thanks. You too. Well, so let's get started here, Alan. What's the upshot on the farm bill here? That seems to have taken the market higher ever so briefly. It's interesting to me how sort of short-lived that whole sector-wide catalyst seems to have unfolded.
Yeah, I think it's kind of confusing. I've been following the hemp space, obviously, for a long time, and it's always been gray. So I know that as we move more towards black and white, people will appreciate that. I mean, for now, we've had these companies, having run-ins with the FDA, and that still may continue, by the way. But I think the removal of the uncertainty about are you able to do business or not is a huge step forward. And but I think it's really early to figure out who the winners and losers are going to be. And obviously, from the big picture perspective, legalizing cannabis's cousin, I guess is what people call it, is a good thing because I think people will see the path forward for THC type products over time. But in the interim, I think I've said this on your show before. I think it's really a win for the LPs, James and Ed. It's these are the companies that I think are going to be very well positioned in our market.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then why the it's more like a fart in the wind, to use one of a better term, in terms of it didn't really, like we saw through a lot of lift in the CBD focused companies like Charlotte's Web got a nice lift, but it didn't last, it didn't hold. And I would think that this would be something that catalyzes ongoing accumulation of CBD stocks that I thought would the upward effect would have been more sustained.
Yeah, well, let's put it in perspective. Charlotte's Web and CV Sciences and Elixinol, these are the three public companies that I track most closely on this front. They're in the middle of huge rallies. And Charlotte, if you look at what's going on in the Canadian market for U.S. cannabis companies, it's been, this is a family show. It's been a terrible time. I was going to use a different term. A lot of deals are coming out. They're trading way below where they raise capital. Charlotte's Web has held that, that was a true IPO, actually. It's held its IPO price from day one. And so it's done well. Yeah, it's off the highs, but if you look at Elixinol, that just made a new all-time high. CV Sciences was, I think it bounced off three and change the other day, if I'm not mistaken, just below 4. So, the trader aspect's a little bit different than the investment aspect. And I'd say for all these companies, it's probably a positive thing, but investors have to be concerned about, will they be able to compete with new companies entering the space? Will they be able to compete with Aurora, Cannabis, and Canopy Growth? I mean, I think it's going to be a big market, and it remains to be seen, but I'm not so sure I'd be running things up right now.
Right. Okay, so this is more or less in line with what you would expect the reaction to be, is what you're saying.
I don't know. The older I get, I don't know what to expect, James. I get your point. There should be a lot of hoopla. We're in a very tough market right now. The markets are just hammered this year. The overall stock market's been a problem. I've picked up, I don't know if I've talked about it with you guys, but I've been talking about it at 420 Investor since late November. I mean, this is the mother of all tax loss selling seasons. And, in the cannabis space, the last couple of years, we haven't seen this because we've had these end of year rallies. People have gains. They don't necessarily have very many losses to take. This year is very different. We have massive losses across the sector, names that have lost, 75 to 80% of their value or more. And at the same time, we have some huge winners. And so early in the year, when Jeff Sessions kind of pulled the rug out from everybody, and it hurt Canadian stocks, it hurt US stocks, people ended up selling securities that they bought in 2017 and booking big profits. This year, they're going to have to pay big taxes, or in April, if they don't offset them. So I think we've been seeing a lot of tax loss selling going on against those gains from early in the year for some investors. And at the same time, some of the stocks that have gone up a lot this year, some that come to mind for me are like Ianthus or Origin House. These are under pressure now because I've been sharing a very simple example. What if you had just two investments? Half of it was in Origin House and half was in, let's say, TerraTech. TerraTech's lost 3/4 of its value. So if you had $100 in each, it's worth $25. And just roughly, Origin House, if you had $100, a few weeks ago it was worth $200. So then you're out of balance. And so it makes it really easy for something we really don't see at year end typically, for these winners to come under pressure. And so losers are getting sold, winners are getting sold. It's a pretty nasty time. So I wouldn't get too caught up in the day-to-day of what's going on in these stocks right now.
Yeah, well, I can tell you in my own portfolio on the cannabis side, I bought some Origin House. I bought some Ianthus a few weeks ago. When they were on a bit of a tear, thinking, okay, this is the next leg up. And so to sit here and watch them sell off and scratch my head and think, well, I guess
Right.
all those theories I had towards what's going to happen at the end of the year are now out the window because the tax law selling was compounded by geopolitical uncertainty, trade war, all these other compounding factors, the dissolution or resolution of Brexit. I mean, there's just all these things have come to converge at the end of the year to create real downdraft across not just cannabis, but all markets. So what do you see happening for the onset of 2019? I mean, are we looking at a reversal here? Are we looking at a sit on your hands and wait and see? Or is it going to be more of the same in terms of downward spiral?
Yeah, as a longtime veteran of the market, I know January 2nd or the first trading day of the year doesn't turn things on a dime necessarily. I think this year it actually could. I think people are very optimistic about the space, and we've talked about a lot of the factors that have hurt performance recently, but a huge problem, I think, has been all the supply of stock. And not only have we seen a lot of U.S. companies come to market through Canada, but we've seen these deals just get crushed. Tilt Holdings, I don't know if that's on your radar, James, but it was kind of a weird deal where you had a Canadian ACMPR applicant that was already publicly traded at the time, Sante Veritas, merged with 3 other companies in the United States. It's always an odd thing to have all these companies merge at one time. They go public. Before they go public, they sell shares at $5.25 Canadian. And the next thing you know, it's trading at $2. I mean, unbelievable. So I think people they're hurt. They're not focused on the long term. They're trying to protect their capital. I think everybody's just looking forward to the end of the tax loss selling season, and hopefully they'll start to focus on what I think are going to be solid fundamentals in 2019. We're already seeing, I know you follow it, these revenue numbers are just phenomenal. I think next year, we'll have to focus on more than revenue. We're going to have to focus on operating cash flow and operating profits, things like that. But we're already seeing some companies that are generating true profits, not accounting gimmicks, but truly profitable businesses. And some of the companies have caught a lot of heat for absorbing huge losses this year. And I think they're going to have to cut back on some of these losses because all they have to do is look and see the investors really don't want to see that extent. And I'm not going to name names like Medman, but and I like Medman, by the way, but it's just not sustainable. You can't raise $60 million and then blow $60 million. And I think so next year we're going to see good, solid fundamentals for the industry and just get past this morass that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the passage of the Farm Bill into law, do you think that could be looked at as the United States moving one step closer to federal deprohibition?
Yeah, I'm not going to link them too closely. I think if you're a long-term thinker, the answer is yes. If you're looking for something to happen in the next few months or even next year or even 2020, probably not. I think it kind of shows the path forward. And, I keep telling people the Canadian LPs have the world, but they don't have the United States. Well, they may on CBD now. It appears that you can export, and I expected them to, acquire properties in the United States that'll be TSX compliant. So, but at the same time, they're not able to participate in the U.S. market, which is highly fragmented and rapidly growing in terms of next year we'll have Michigan coming online. Well, they're starting to come online for medical, but we'll get closer to full legalization there, and that's a really exciting state. We have other states that are scaling up, so I think that you don't have to have this legalization that people want. And as a matter of fact, most people in the industry don't want legalization. They want the slow, methodical rollout that allows these companies to become behemoths over time before they have to compete with the Altrias and the Cronoses. And so I think if you put 2 and 2 together, you see where we're headed as a country. This is a nice test case. It shows that there's bipartisanship. This is a much easier sell. It's the farmer, and so I think that's an easier sell than full legalization. And I think full legalization is extremely complicated, and so people shouldn't expect that to be a very short process. In fact, I would say it's a 3 to 5 year process once they even decide to do it, because we have all these different state laws and programs right now, and I think it's going to be a real mess. So we've got some time.
You bet. All right, Alan, let's leave it there. We'll come back to you again next week. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Alan.
All right. Well, that's
Thank you.
You know, never a dull moment there with Alan. Always very insightful. It's great to have that perspective from down south there.
Yeah.
I just want to remind our viewers that on Friday we're going to have both Cam Batley is going to be here first in an interview, and then we'll have Bruce Linton here afterwards in a separate interview. Some people were asking me if it was going to be the two of them at the same time.
Really?
Yes. We thought, well, you know, that might be an interesting conversation. I thought it would be interesting if we had Bruce interview Cam and then Cam interview Bruce.
Really?
Yeah.
Like point, counterpoint.
Point, counterpoint. Wouldn't that be a fun conversation to have?
Yeah.
But
lots of fun. Yeah, you know, I really wanted to, you know, the farm bill. I mean, look, like look at hemp. Hemp shot up from 80 cents to $1.70. Yeah, you know, and I'm a trading oriented.
yeah.
Lots going on still. Lots of money moving around from here to there and back to here and there.
Yeah. When we come back, we're going to take a look at what's happening towards the market close here in our cannabis stocks. Stay tuned. Steve, the Miser, how's it going, my friend?
Good, James. How are you?
Well, you know, I'm a little bit pissed off. These super voting structures, these large cap companies who are U.S. multi-state operators coming and listing on the CSE with these multiple voting share structures where, you know, a couple of insiders are essentially controlling the destiny of the company and the shareholders really don't have a vote. Wasn't it you who was telling me that back in the 90s, the super voting structures were basically drummed out of town, off the market and everything? What was it about super voting structures that you money managers didn't like?
Well, specifically the relaunch of the multi-voting structure is due to obviously in the cannabis space, and that's where we're seeing the resurgence, and it's not ideal, that's for sure. I don't know that all the multi-voting share structures were drummed out of town, but it became a big issue with corporate governance. It seemed if the idea of a corporation and one vote, one share structure is pure democracy in its rawest form, then multi-voting is inappropriate.
It's a dictatorship.
It is. It is. And it allows individuals to dilute and issue more shares without losing their control position. So a lot of the share structures were collapsed due to shareholder vote and due to institutional governance and pressure from institutional shareholders. So that's how that's how a lot of it disappeared, but it didn't all disappear.
Sure. So give me an example of the most egregious form of corporate behavior in the super voting structures from a past example.
Well, I would say Magna stands out. In the early 1990s, Magna allowed Mr. Stronach to control the company with less than 1% of the issued equity of the company, and still does to this day, to my knowledge. I think that's unfortunate. In the early 1990s, around 91, when interest rates went really high, Magna was essentially a bankrupt entity, and the bondholders had to do special votes and give special concessions to allow the company to stay in business because they were in debt default. Sadly, what the debt holders did is they did not insist at that time to collapse the multi-voting structure, and Mr. Stronach was able to hang on, and that's going back 28 years ago, which is quite amazing. But that really, and that allowed Mr. Stronach to go into racetracks and entertainment and things that maybe were outside of the venue of auto parts. And notwithstanding, it's quite a company, but it doesn't seem appropriate that he can control the company with really such a minuscule stock position.
So is there a risk that the large cannabis companies who are governed by these super voting structures, is there a risk that they could decide to go into horse racing too if there's some weakness in the cannabis space that spooks them and equity investors won't actually have a vote to stop that?
It's true. I mean, they essentially have dictatorial control. The two big ones that went public in the U.S. just in the last month, they both ended up with about between 82 and 84% voting equity after the issuances of at least $300 million in each IPO case. And the one individual or a handful of individuals control 84% of the stock. That's pretty compelling for them and not for shareholders. I think the excitement of the space and to get all those multi-state opportunities allowed the shareholders to maybe overlook that structure, but it's not ideal, and it arguably is not ideal for maximum valuation in a stock.
Sure. So is it your position that retail investors should stay away from super voting structures given all other things being equal in a basket of stocks they're considering as an investment?
I think it's a component of consideration, and it's not ideal. Now, there are some major institutional businesses in Canada that major institutional companies or institutional grade companies that have multi-voting or non-voting stock structures, typically in the Canadian media space. Now, it was argued, and they were still grandfathered or accepted by the market, it was argued that that was to protect Canadian media companies from hostile foreign takeovers by American or international entities. So companies like Rogers have voting stock, which the family controls, and non-voting shares. Shaw has non-voting shares or sub-voting shares, and that was more typical. And when McLean Hunter was public, they had X and Y shares. So there is some legacy of these sub-voting stock or sub-voting stock companies around in Canada, but really left over. Canadian Tire is one that's most interesting because it goes back probably to the 1930s or 40s, where the Billis family took the voting stock, and the shares that trade for the both classes in Rogers and Canadian Tire case, they both trade, but the liquid one and the one that's widely owned is the non-voting shares. What they do offer, though, is they offer this coattail provision. I haven't looked at the U.S. cannabis companies. I'm going to assume that's in there, but that's in the event of a takeover of the company that it's called a coattail provision, which should allow the non-voting shareholders to get exactly the same price per share as the voting shares. Yeah. Now, Canadian Tire doesn't have that, and there was a controversy some decades ago when they tried to sell the company, and the price spread between the common non-voting and the super voting shares was dramatic, and that the deal ended up failing.
So I'm looking at the case where so the coattail provisions do exist in the U.S. operators who are Canadian listed, but the weakness in the coattail provision says that just because an offer is made for the super voting class does not necessarily mean that the shareholders get to vote on the adequacy of that offer. However, they will be subjected to the same takeout price if the super voting holders get to actually approve the takeout offer.
Yeah, I mean, each structure is different, and it's going to be in the fine print of the prospectus, so I don't know specifically, but typically it will be a case where management recommends to shareholders that this is fair and this is good and you should take it. But I don't know for certain in each case, and each case may vary whether there's the privilege or the right of the subordinate voting or the non-voting shareholders to vote. I think the new deals that have come in the cannabis space are actually subordinate voting, so you get a vote, but there are super shares that allow multitudes of votes to overwhelm and dilute out the value of a single vote.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I'm going to stick with the companies without the super voting structures, but thanks, Stevie. See you later.
You bet, James.
Hemp Technologies says that we're awfully long-winded there over at the water cooler.
Jesus.
Says, don't you guys have any work to do?
Did you get? You must be dying of thirst. Over
That
there.
is our work, Mrs. Kemp or Mr. Kemp. That is our work. Water cooler conversation. That's the center of the economic universe.
That's
over
where
there,
you
I'll
get the
have
action. Yeah.
That's right. That's where the insights are extracted. Anyways, so I also want to talk more about next week. We've got on Monday, CanTrust CEO, incoming CEO Peter Aceto is going to be here. Chiron Life Sciences President Chris Naprawa is going to be here. He's going to talk about their foray into Mexico. Alan Brochstein will be here to discuss the whole South American thing and other stuff with us on Monday as well. Then on Tuesday, Charting Man Dan will be here, and we have lots more interesting stuff, but it's audience participation time now. And here's the question of the day.
So here's some fun historic trivia. Traces of cannabis were found in the pipes of which famous literary figure? A. Leo Tolstoy, B. Charles Dickens, or C. William Shakespeare? The answer after this.
So the answer to that question is a lot harder than you might think. But here's the answer to the question. Okay, try that again.
Traces of cannabis were found in the pipes of which famous literary figure? The answer is C. William Shakespeare. South African scientists examined 14 shards of pipes from the town of Stratford upon Avon, where the bard lived. Some were excavated from Shakespeare's own garden. Using advanced scientific methods, researchers detected cannabis on 4 fragments from William Shakespeare's garden. Although some say Willie is making coy references to drug use in some of his plays, others blow smoke on that theory.
And we're back now with Steve Martin. He's the CEO of Pond Technologies. Steve, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a little bit of a
kerfuffle getting in here.
But I feel comfortable now.
Good. So we had you in here last year, and you had a whole bunch of interesting things going on. Why don't we refresh the audience's memory with what exactly does Pond Technologies do?
Pond Technologies takes untreated stack gas emissions from large final emitters, and we grow algae on it. And the algae has value. It has value as an animal feed, as an aquaculture feed. For human consumption, as a matter of fact, we actually grow a material that's the most powerful antioxidant known. It's called astaxanthin. We just recently completed an acquisition of a company that's been in that marketplace for quite some time, completing a vertical integration sort of play that has been very important for us.
Okay, so how does it make money?
It makes money because the algae is worth an awful lot. The astaxanthin product that comes out of the algae, it's about 10% of the mass. It's worth about $7.5 million a ton.
Wow. And how many tons a year do you sell right now?
Well, you know, we're targeting to sell 1 ton per year from our Markham District Energy site that's coming online in 2019. But already we have significant sales through both wholesale and retail channels with our new brand called Regenerix. That's one example of algae products. We have others. Aquaculture feeds are worth less, but the markets are huge.
Okay.
2,000 to 3,000 US per ton.
So going back to that stack-generated algae, what does it cost you to generate a ton?
It's about $600 per ton, something on the order of that. It depends on what you're growing. There are some minor differences, but we're building a full-scale plant at Stelco in Hamilton.
Really?
As well, we're building with Markham District Energy in Markham, Ontario on their combined heat and power plant.
Now, does this take CO2 out of the atmosphere, out of the stack?
It takes it out of the stack, but not just the CO2. We take all of the pollutants. We take everything that goes out the stack, goes into the algae, and the algae very happily eat it all. And the sort of very interesting part about it is a couple of the technologies that we've developed have overlap with areas of interest that I know that you guys have been covering. Cannabis, for example. Our growth technology is directly applicable to cannabis applications, and we've been developing it and filing appropriate intellectual property to try and expand the technology out into that area. As well, that's sort of the upstream, the idea that we could help grow in cannabis, but as well, the astaxanthin product that comes out the other end is a sort of a co-product that goes along very well with edibles and CBD and THC. So we have opportunities to affect both up and downstream in the cannabis market as well.
Oh, fantastic. So the astaxanthin product
this
is something that is good for human consumption?
It's actually tremendous for human consumption.
Really?
Sort of anecdotally, I can tell you if you take 12 milligrams, you get no hangover. It helps prevent sunburn. It's the most powerful antioxidant known. So oxidative damage is what sort of injures us. If you take, people typically take between 4 and 12 milligrams a day. You'll find that you have reduced joint pain, inflammation. It fights all 3 causes of inflammation. I can't remember offhand, but the number is somewhere between 600 and 3,000 times more powerful than vitamin E as an antioxidant.
Sure. Okay, so right now on my NDI, you'll see it on this screen. So this is your superior algae harvesting platform.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you could just walk us through where the value is in this, because it's not something that you can look at and easily understand.
For sure. Algae is well known. People grow it by accident in their swimming pools, routinely. But the idea of having a repeatable industrial production of algae with all its value, because we're into a time where sustainable proteins are very important. It's a UN sustainability goal, and everybody is quite worried about that. What we have done is developed a platform technology that lets us grow any of the myriad strains of algae you might like to grow that are suitable for human consumption. They're suitable for nutraceuticals, as I said, with the astaxanthin product. And the value proposition is that we can do that using an industrial output as our input. 1 ton of algae requires about 2 tons of carbon dioxide to grow. Our plan is to grow many tons, to hundreds to thousands of tons of algae as we grow the company. Therefore, we need many tons to hundreds to thousands of tons of CO2. Conveniently, and actually sort of serendipitously, industry provides that for us and concentrates it in the form of an emission point.
Wow.
So it's sort of a virtuous circle.
So can this reduce the pressure on arable land that currently is being largely consumed by animal feeds, because we can replace it with this higher nutrition algae product?
Yeah, by definition, it does that because the productivity is so much higher. If you consider a plant like soy, its life cycle might be 90 to 100 days. Algae's life cycle is 2 to 4 hours. So we can grow in a number of hours what it would take, sort of a third of a year to grow in terms of other products. And it's a near perfect food for us, for animals, and for aquaculture, in particular for aquaculture. So spirulina, chlorella, some of the other strains.
Yeah, you've got a real amazing operation in St. Mary's. I remember when I was there, and I remember some of the technology that potential offshoot with lighting and things like that. It's wild stuff. Like it's mind-boggling, and because you're only taking, there was some rule that you could do this with the stack because you were less than 10% of
we can take as much. At the time when we started the company, these ideas of technologies like this were sort of unknown.
Yeah.
And so we were existing under a 1% umbrella at the time, taking less than 1%.
1% of the effluent.
Yeah, but now that the technology's been proven and we are building a full-scale plant at Stelco, the understanding is that the plant can grow to arbitrary size, limited only by the sort of capital investment we have to expand and how quickly we can get there. But you mentioned lighting. Lighting is what led to the first indications that there might be applicability in cannabis. Cannabis growers approached us and said, can you build us a cheaper light? I said, I can build you a cheaper and better light, but that's not your problem. Your problem is you need an integrated growth system.
Yeah.
We currently grow the most difficult to grow plant, algae. There's nothing more difficult to grow than algae because it grows so quickly. If you get it wrong for an hour, you lose it. We can apply our growth technology to your application, and we think we can deliver real benefits. As well, one of our products fits with yours.
Okay, so where do you sit in terms of the development of the whole business, in terms of revenue, profitability, et cetera?
Well, actually, with the acquisitions, we acquired the book of business of RF Ingredients, RFI Canada. They're a nutraceutical, they're basically a broker of algae products, spirulina, chlorella, the kinds of things we grow. And with Regenerix, which was just announced, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, you get so much going on, you don't always remember the exact date. We're actually beginning to generate revenue right now from algae and related products, as well as the astaxanthin derived products. So we're into revenue now. Our Q3 results were over $1 million in revenue from the work that we're doing at Stelco. So or about $1 million in revenue from what we're doing at Stelco, and we're expecting to do very well over the next couple of years as we grow the business.
Well, great. All right. So you've got only 20 million shares outstanding?
Something so, yeah.
That's
A little more now with the acquisitions, but yeah.
Yeah, that's awfully tight share structure. So this
I've heard that before.
Yeah. So this strikes me as something that is pretty much flying beneath everybody's radar because the product is obviously valuable. You're on the brink of profitability by the sounds of things, and you've got a very tight share structure. Do you need to raise any more capital to get to profitability?
It depends on how large we'd like to expand over the next year. We don't have to raise capital to get to profitability. We may look at raising capital to expand more quickly. The number of opportunities we have to deploy the technology, as you can imagine, every smokestack in North America is an opportunity.
Absolutely.
There's more than 10,000 of them. So it depends on how quickly we can address all of those. It's a function of how much capital we have available.
You bet. All right, that's a great update, Steve. We'll come back to you in due course. We'll probably send a camera crew out to get some footage.
You know
of
what?
this
I
stuff.
think you'd be extremely impressed. It looks to be like the cutting edge of
All homegrown, all Ontario-based
Yeah,
technology.
And have you made any inroads into the cannabis space yet?
We have had some discussions with a few people. I think that they've gone through this phase of rapid growth in capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're now beginning to focus more on production and productivity, and I think that that's a really nice sweet spot for us to get into discussions. So if people are interested, you should give me a call. I have the solution to your problems.
We will do. Thanks very much for that. We'll come back to you in due course and have you on again. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Great seeing you again, Steve.
Look down here, everybody. What do you see? Is this gold? Yes, it is. When we come back, we're going to have a discussion about gold and the price of gold and what might be driving the price higher. And is it maybe time for retail investors to reconsider the long out of favor yellow metal? But before we go there, Ed, late breaking news flash. Mississauga Council says no to cannabis shops. Now this is Mississauga. Has Mr. Saga had a voice in this?
Mississauga probably. Mississauga rules the roost.
Mississauga rules the roost.
Yeah,
so if Mississauga says no pot shops, no pot shops.
Mr. Saga doesn't have a chance.
So Mr. Sauga's out in Oakville, just over the county line, smoking his head off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So what does that mean? Does that mean no cannabis? But there's no cannabis shops really allowed though yet, is there?
Well, yet, but
they're just saying, hey, all these illegal dispensaries are going to stay illegal. Is that what you're saying?
That's essentially what it looks like.
So I'm not going to go cruising down to Mississauga.
Well, the point Mississauga is trying to make, much to Mr. Sauga's chagrin, is that even when they legalize physical stores in Ontario, Mississauga's City Council, which apparently Mr. Sauga has no vote in whatsoever, is going to refuse licensing to any applicant looking to open a cannabis store in Mississauga City lines. Now, can they do that?
I don't know. Apparently.
So if you decide, screw them, I'm opening a cannabis store, is it then just a bylaw infraction and you get a fine? Because I'm telling you, while those cannabis stores were open in Ontario, I watched some of those guys rake in cash, hand over fist, by the hour with a lineup out the door, and I thought, I bet you there's more than enough to cover the cost of a daily fine from violating city licensing ordinances.
Well, I know that there was one around the corner here, and they'd close it, and then I'd find out, back open.
Yeah.
Like they don't seem to worry about the fines.
Wacky
tobacco.
That's why they call it wacky tobacco.
Okay.
Yeah. So did you notice that while we were talking to Steve Martin there, that the market's closed?
Market's closed.
Yeah, while we were in the midst of a conversation.
He's very well spoken, this guy, I'll tell you. Like, this guy knows his stuff.
Yeah.
I know they were talking about going public, but it's still private, I understand. Is that right?
Incorrect. The symbol is POND, trades on the TSX.
Okay.
I'll have you know.
Okay, and what's the price?
Too much for you.
Over a dime?
No, it's, let's see. I haven't actually punched in. I'm going to pull up my chart.
I can do that.
Let's go charts advanced here. We'll put in POND.
One of my colleagues from Union was involved.
Oh, well, that's looking at my chart right here. That's a bit of a, that's not an attractive chart, would you say? No.
No.
No, not attractive. So there was a big, somebody bought a bunch of stock here, looks like day before yesterday. The stock had
Right.
a big carrot on it there. Look at that. But
Okay.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Pond
Yeah,
Technologies.
yeah. So here it is. Here it is, trading. Yeah. It's been a tough market for small caps, hasn't it? And I don't know
It's
what.
been a tough market for everything. Like, look at Apple. Apple's down 33% since September.
Apple was capped well over $1 trillion. Now capped 800 million. Billion.
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 $1 billion. Never mind.
Yeah. You know what? What was the name? Bare Naked Ladies. They need to change their song. If I had $1 million, it should now be If I had $1 billion.
If I had $1 million. I don't know those words. I don't know how to sing.
Wow.
Okay, so let's take a quick look here at the market movers at the end of the day here on the old
Yeah.
quote stream device on the TSX Venture. High Trader, Media Valet, whopping 2 cents. Let's look at volume percentage change. Maybe that's more exciting. No. Protech Home Medical. Now this is interesting. The symbol is PHM. This thing used to be called Patient Home Technologies, and now it's called PHM. And it was $2.50 about 3 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that. That was quite the promo.
Michael Dawson and Roger Green were the promoters behind it. I think they got. I think they won't be
promoted.
coming back to Toronto anytime soon. No,
No.
they were the promoters. Aldershot Resources closed the day up 8.3% on it's going to be 4.6 million shares rounded off correctly. ATAC Resources down 24.6%, lost 8 cents to 25 cents. That thing used to be over $1 back in the mining heyday. Hash Chain Technologies, hash chain, emphasis on chain. Think blockchain, down to 2 cents. That was a high flyer earlier this year as well.
Yeah, that whole.
You know what this looks to me like? This looks to me like a whole pile of tax loss selling here in the last week of tax loss selling season.
Well, you know what? I think all the planets have aligned to make this a great year to sit back. Don't get too aggressive right now because tax loss selling is going to go right through till I think the Thursday or Friday before. I think Christmas is on New Year's is on a Tuesday. So
27th is the last day
There
you
you
can
go.
sell.
Yeah,
and
that would be
book-
the Thursday.
Book it for
Yeah.
2018
Yeah,
taxes.
Yeah.
27th. So I think that the 28th and the Thursday is the 27th.
Yeah.
So the 28th, that day is a day I want to be watching the market with a bunch of capital ready to go. I think that's when you're going to start to see the turn come in cannabis stocks and potentially some of the other hotter sectors that were sold off largely this year. The battery metals potentially might have a bit of a reversal early into towards the end of 2018. So back on the TSX, the large cap, Aurora Cannabis closed the day up 22 cents, 2.7% to $8.15. Aphria Inc. ended the day 42 cents lower, down 5.12% to $7.78 on 12.2 million shares traded.
Yeah.
Bombardier managed to tack on 7 cents, up 3.21% on 10 million shares traded to $2.25. Hydro One flat at $32 as usual. Veritex, BTE on the TSX closed the day up 4 cents to $2.26, up 1.8% on 6.7 million shares traded. And the usual suspects in the usual places. Nothing too resolute there.
Yeah.
Finally, on the CSE now, Vigogo. Remember Vigogo? So Vigogo was going to be a payment processor for gambling sites. Can't remember, something
Yeah.
like that. Anyways, down at a nickel, 16 million shares traded. It looks like something's getting ready to happen with that, which is now trading like a shell. Crop infrastructure, yeah. Global Hemp Group, GHG, up 7 cents to 19 cents. FSD Pharma flat at 30 cents, but still managed to trade 5 million shares. Remember how FSD Pharma was trading like 30, 50, 80, 90 million shares a day? What
Yeah.
happened?
What happened?
What happened? The wind is out of those sails.
Yeah. Well, you know, market cap again, 400 million for that little puppy.
Yeah, so the interesting thing to me here is that on the CSE, the volume leaders, numbers 1, 4, well, okay, so that never mind. Number 1 trader is not a cannabis company. There's the point I'm trying to make. Spit it out.
What is the number 1 trader?
Vigogo.
Oh, yeah.
On the CSE.
Yeah.
Now, I want to turn our attention here for a brief second to, I'm going to look up the price of gold, because gold has been doing very well, and I bought some.
I see that. I see it. In fact, I noticed one of them is missing.
What?
Just kidding.
I was going to say, this is one of the biggest problems with gold, is it's easy to carry away. So here we've got 1 ounce gold wafers from TD. This, when I bought it, was about $10,000 worth of gold, and I bought it 2 weeks ago, and it's now worth almost $11,000.
Up 10%.
Up 10% in
Wow.
just 2 weeks. So here's the interesting thing about owning gold, is that if the bank machines ever stop distributing currency, if the financial system really collapsed,
Right.
gold is something that would soar in price because of its scarcity. And the price of gold would just go insane. Now, it's not going to take a catastrophic breakdown in the financial system to drive gold to above $10,000 an ounce, as has been predicted by the most vociferous and egregious gold bugs out there. All it's going to take is for the continuous undermining of the purchasing power of cash to make gold more attractive, both on a nominal basis and on an actual basis. So the reason that I'm bringing up gold here at the end of 2018, as the cannabis market looks at a loss for the year, and the cryptocurrency market has all but disappeared in terms of capital markets, these are the things that needed to happen to bring the attention back to the metallic commodities, and gold is always the leader of the metallic commodities. So my point is, I just wanted to point out here in physical terms that I am putting into gold some actual money, and that's because I think in 2018 we're going to start to see gold, 2019 rather, we're going to start to see gold reflect the value of the currencies in circulation globally, the euro, the dollar, the yuan. And I think those currencies are going to plummet in value, despite all of the aspects that make the U.S. dollar superficially strong.
I want to say that I've been watching gold for probably 40 years. I hate to admit, makes me at least 40 years old.
You're looking good for 40.
Well, thank you. But you know, I'll tell you, the way it's acting right now, it's sort of stealthily moving higher, quietly. I think this is how it's got to happen. I think if it goes up too fast, it'll sell too fast. But, you know, gold has moved up $70, $80 an ounce now. Mm-hmm. And no one's really even talking about it. Well, yeah, I guess you're...
Except us.
Are you someone?
You've not been listening to the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I think that real money, it's been around for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
It's going to have, before this is all over, I think it's got to have a run.
Yeah. You know, Bloomberg has really screwed it up. You used to be able to see a chart of gold, and I guess you can over here.
GLD. Put up the GLD. GLD.
I like to, because I own gold, I like to look at gold.
That's.
So there's the 12. There's the price. There's the chart right here on gold. So this is in the last. I'm going to stretch it out to the year-to-date look. So here's this is where it would have been really the smart time to buy gold, was right back in August. But of course, we've had a couple of retracements back to that low almost in the gold price here. But this is why I'm buying it, is because it looks like the lows are getting higher and the highs are getting higher. And from what I've learned from my good charting technologist friends here, that's the sign of potentially breakout to the upside.
If you go back to the end of 2015, gold went from about 1,050 to 1,350. Went up 30% in about 4 months, and the whole venture went on a tear. you could have made you made a lot of money. And we thought that was the beginning. I think that just ended the sort of the correction. It's been really moving sideways. I agree with you. I think we're getting closer and closer.
Yeah. Okay, so there's something to think about. That's gold. But now we're going to talk to our intrepid writer and editor-at-large, Benjamin A. Smith, is going to join us to talk about his recently published article entitled Scotiabank Finds Hindenburg's Aphria Research Not Fully Contextualized. Ben, are you with us? There you are.
Looking a little...
Hi guys, I'm here.
Look a little fuzzy there,
Fuzzy
Ben.
there, yeah. Did you shave this morning?
Are we high or are you high? Boy.
I think it's the camera, not me, guys, but we got to look at that.
Okay. So Ben, you've been getting a lot of feedback from the piece you wrote here that where Scotiabank has come out in favor of Aphria, or at least against the quality of the research by Hindenburg and QCM. What is the upshot of the feedback you're getting from the Midas Letter audience?
Well, I think the feedback has been pretty positive. I can see on the back end the traffic has been quite substantial, and we have about 350 shares on Facebook, which means it's getting a lot of traffic. So feedback is pretty positive. Obviously, a lot of people are looking into, consider Scotiabank's research very substantial, because up until now, it was really the internet brigade coming to Aphria's defense. We haven't really heard from Vic over the past 10 days or so. That's supposed to come out, his rebuttal, today or tomorrow at some point. But up until now, really no one's really come to the mainstream defense of Aphria and really rebutted the research. It's been people on Twitter, it's been investors on Reddit Weed Stocks and other venues. So yeah, I mean, for Scotiabank to come out and dig at the valuation thesis, and in places like the Jamaican assets, which were probably around only 40 or 45 million instead of the 145 that Hindenburg said, and other things, I think it's pretty big.
So essentially, increasingly, the data that is referenced in the Hindenburg research is being found to be either outright false or, at the very least, inaccurate.
Yeah, I think so. I think what it comes down to is the fact that at this point, when Hindenburg came out, or a day after, or during the report, the presentation that they gave, they were characterizing Aphria as being perhaps a fraud and the stock going to zero. And I think it's pretty categorically proven that that isn't the case. I mean, say what you want about the research. I don't think that everything is, they bring up some good points in the report, and certainly things need to be looked into, but it's definitely not as bad, I don't think, as they made it appear. I mean, there's definitely not, it doesn't appear to be any sort of fraudulent activities. Perhaps there's some coziness involved. I don't know. Let's hear Vic's side. But, the worst case scenario, I think we can pretty much take that out of the equation. And that's what Scotiabank really reinforced yesterday. From where I sit.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, do you think that's the last we've heard from Hindenburg and QCM? Do you think they're going to disappear back into the obscurity from which they briefly emerged?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, when it comes to Aphria, I think so. Maybe they didn't expect quite the blowback from the investor base, which is pretty substantial in this stock. And, I don't see what else they can bring out to really recapture that crowd. But they can always, repackage their brand and the research to go after someone else, or who knows, even, rename the company if it gets really bad on their end. But I don't think it'll be the last we see them, but it's going to be hard for them to come back and attack this stock with any sort of vigor.
Okay, so what else are you looking at today, Ben? What are you seeing from where you're sitting out there in Mississauga? You're not going to be able to buy any weed from any physical store out there
anymore.
Yeah, I heard about that. I actually wrote a quick little story about how City Council voted 10-2 against cannabis retail sales here in the city, which is fine, I guess. It's available, in surrounding locations and online. But I think in the broad market, again, what we're seeing with the Farm Bill and with some other things is that the broad market isn't really moving in unitary fashion. So you have, Canopy Growth showing some pretty good movement lately. Aurora Cannabis broke to, new 5-day highs, and it looked like it could go somewhere. But then you have Tilray, trading down to 84, 85 a share, and some other stocks, below the 200-day moving average. So it's very, the market is not moving in unitary fashion right now. I think if you're a trader, if you're looking for short-term gains, you want to look at the small cap stocks. So some of the junior names like Choom in Sproutly Canada recently, and 48 North. Some of those gains off the bottom have been quite large, 60, 70, 80%. So if you're looking for alpha, I think you want to look at the junior end of the market right now, and some cannabis companies with good news, and look to ride say a 3, 4, 5-day move. If you're a long-term investor, unfortunately, I think there's no need to rush in at the present time. At least that's what the technicals are telling me.
You bet. Okay, so now what about as a result of the Farm Bill? What issuers would you be looking at more favorably since the Farm Bill came out or since the Farm Bill was approved?
Well, obviously the CBD extractors, Charlotte's Web, CV Sciences, and those type of companies will probably benefit the most right off the bat. Ultimately, I think consumers will benefit the most because with the legalization of hemp production in the United States, the cost of CBD oil will come way down, I think, in the back half of 2019, which is good for everybody and will open up markets. So, CBD extractors, Aurora Cannabis might even benefit from that, but you'd want to look there, and some of them have moved quite significantly over the past few days.
All right, Ben, thanks very much for joining us. We'll come back to you soon. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, see you guys.
What about Hempco?
Hempco, yeah, we were talking about Hempco earlier.
Is that do they benefit? I mean, look at this thing.
Well, that's the one that tripled, or doubled rather, in 3 sessions.
Yeah.
So I want to pull up that chart right now.
Yeah, I've got it up right now.
Okay, on your screen.
Yeah.
So are you looking at the 3-month look?
I'm looking at a 1 year, but
Pull it out to like 3 months, so we can get those 3 days in perspective. Okay.
Well, look, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. So look at those 3 days. Look at the volume. So that's leading up to. Is that third candle today or yesterday?
That last candle, which is totally red, because it basically gave back this one here. Yeah, the one you can't see.
Oh. Okay.
The one you can't see because you're stoned. No, right there. Look at. No, the point. Look at red, green, green, green. The phone goes green, 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 and I pink it up. And say, did you hear that joke?
No, I have not.
Guy was trying to get a job as in a place where they answer
call center.
Call center.
A guy's trying to get a job in the call center.
He's from he doesn't know much about anything, and they said, well, we'll give you a job, but you have to make a sentence with these pink, green, and yellow. And he goes, the phone goes green, green, I pink it up, and I say yellow.
Did you get the job then?
He got the job.
That's great. Let's see, what else have we got going on in the cannabis space here at the end of the day. Shoot, I lost my... There we go. Okay. So we were looking at... let's take a look at the NYSE, see what happened over there.
Yeah, I want to see the SPI, the Standard & Poor's there. Yeah.
Volume active on the NYSE. Number 1, General Electric, last at 671 on 105 million shares traded, up 0.74 or down 0.74%. The SPDR S&P 500 up $1.33 or 0.5% on 96 million shares traded. And the iShares MSCI Emerging Markets Index added 65 cents to close up $1.63% to 40.41.
I hear they're going to change the name of General Electric to General Eclectic.
Generally eclectic? Oh boy. I don't know where we're going with that.
Just saying.
All right,
General
let's take a look at
eclectic.
all of our cannabis indexes now. Looking at, so the large cap index actually finished the day down 2.1%
Well,
to 73.80.
you know, Aphria's in there. Now, what did we do? We haven't looked at weed for a while.
Well, let's look at it right now. Whoops, wrong screen. Here we go. Index page. Weed is 42.84, down 3.3%. Lost
Yeah.
$1.46 today. So in the large caps, the big loser is actually Kronos Group, shed 6.13%, down $1.05 to 16.07.
You know, that's interesting because, you know, from my quick calculation, if the deal goes through, about half their market cap's in cash. So, you know, if this is going down, I don't know what it means.
How many shares are they issuing to Altria if the deal closes?
If the deal closes, I believe it's about $2.5
billion in cash.
Yeah.
But how many shares does
150 million?
150 million. So this is my question. Is Kronos losing ground now because people are starting to read the fine print on the announcement and saying, well, this thing's not scheduled to close till sometime next year.
Yeah, it's supposed to close sometime in the first 6 months of next year, which means there's going to be a lot of due diligence done.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, when Tilray closed that convertible debenture, they announced a convertible debenture with no price and said that it would close subject to due diligence, so leaving it very indeterminate. And so the stock took off because it was a $450 million bought deal, if I'm not mistaken. And the stock took off, but then the next day it started to sell off because people said, wait a sec, this thing's not a done deal. There's lots of sort of wishy-washy subjective language in here.
Lots of T's not crossed yet.
Lots of I's without dots.
Yeah.
But then what happened a week later? Boom, they closed it. So it made everybody look foolish who was doubting them.
Yeah,
Aurora Cannabis was the only large cap that was up today. Find that interesting.
I didn't like the action today on the S&P, but it keeps moving up and then backing off.
Yeah. Look at our good friends at Juju. We're starting to reverse. This is the third day in a row.
Tickle action.
So it's turned around. It looks like it bottomed at 8 cents. It's now at 9.5 cents, up 0.005. Full disclosure, I have purchased a boatload of shares at around 9 cents because I did think that was going to be the bottom. Chiron Life Sciences flat at $1.42. Now, Chiron Life, we're having Chris Naprawa, who's the president of Chiron, in here. He's going to have a thing or two to say about Aurora's press release, where their first mover advantage in Mexico. They put out the press release suggesting they had first mover advantage, whereas Chiron is already selling products into Mexico, cannabis products that are CBD and cosmeceutical in nature. But we saw that from the interview we had with Vicente Fox that obviously, you know, they're pretty plugged into Mexico. So we're going to ask Chris how much of that first mover advantage statement from Aurora really can be justified, considering that Chiron's actually been there for a few months already. So as per usual, lots of different things going on in the cannabis space. You can't believe everything you read. You can't take anything at face value. And so to interpret it all, Ed and I will continue to try to make sense through the murkiness. Don't forget, this Friday we're going to have both Cam Batley, CCO of Aurora Cannabis here, as well as Bruce Linton from Canopy Growth Corp. No, not at the exact same time, at least not that we know of yet. Don't forget that Monday we have CanTrust incoming CEO Peter Aceto, Chiron Life Sciences CEO, or rather President Chris Naprawa, and Alan Brochstein will be joining us again. That's our show for today. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the little bell to get alerts every time we go live. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.